Hey guys, welcome to my webinar, The Truth About Retirement Planning. This is another of a series of 7 webinars. So if you haven't checked out the other ones, we will be dripping them in over the next couple of months, and we will run webinars 7 days a week. They're all free, just like this one is. So let's go ahead and get into this one. What the industry won't tell you: how to protect your wealth, reduce taxes, which everybody wants to do that, and secure lifetime income. This is going to be a guide by me and my partner, David Fisher. My name is Dustin Wiley, owner and operator of Viking Financial Group. If you don't follow me and you just kind of made this webinar by referral or you saw it on an advertisement, I started in the financial services industry about 4 years ago. I was kind of fed up with my life, and I was at the gym and I saw this financial advisor on the phone. I knew nothing about finances other than kind of what he said just didn't sound right. He was on the phone, he had his big watch, he was driving his G-Wagon. And he told this client, he's like, hey, the best I can get you is a 1% rate of return in this CD. And I was like, doesn't seem right. It seems like I saw a commercial on a 3% CD. So I went home, I dug in for a couple hours, and I thought, man, this guy is a liar. And he has all this money because he has a big house, got a big boat, got a big vehicle, nice watch. So I want to go out there and look out for the little guy. And I got into the industry, started helping more and more people, and realized that the industry is so rotten that almost every single firm out there is looking to pull one over on you some way, shape, or form. They build their book of business off of fear. Now, I won't say that every one of them does it, but if they're a mainstream group, most likely they do. So with me, I just wanted to jump in, help people out, make sure they're actually getting what they expected, make sure they actually understand what they're purchasing, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's management, whatever. I wanted to make sure that people knew that their money was well spent. So without further ado, I'll kind of let David give you his story.
Thanks, Dustin. So if you guys don't know me, I pop up on Dustin's social media feed here and there. I've been in this industry, gosh, about 6 years now, and Dustin and I both have learned, we've been blessed to have learned from a guy who's been in the industry more than 50 years. So even while we might not have a ton of experience in terms of years in the business, we've literally learned from people who've been doing this their whole life, from 20s to basically that dude's 80 now, and he's one of the top advisors in the whole world. But just to go over quickly why I'm so passionate about these things is because, like he said, when I got in the industry at first, they always teach you to shadow people and see what's going on with the advisors in your company that are doing well. And I was really shocked because I started asking why people did things, and everyone just said, that's just how you do it. This is just how you do it. They'd never had any reasoning or data to back up their claims. And I'm a huge math and science nerd, so whenever there's no data, you just don't go that route. It makes no sense to me. But I was shocked that people were risking their money with people when there was no financial backing for reasons or strategies that they were implementing, which really scared me. So that's why we became so passionate as a firm about using a lot of cutting edge strategies, solutions, data to make sure that people are maximizing their income, reducing taxes, and protecting their wealth in a very effective way. Because a lot of the strategies out there are based on a study that was done in the late 1990s, which is about 30 years ago. And as you guys know, financial things in our whole economy has changed drastically in the last 30 years. So if you're operating based off that data, which is what most financial advisors are doing, you're probably going to be sorely upset when you get to retirement because you're going to have a lot less income than you expected and a lot of concerns that we find our clients don't even know about that we tell them. So that's why we're going to hopefully go over this with you today and show you some solutions of how we might be able to help solve those concerns that you guys don't even know about.
Yep. Let's jump right into it. So, what are your biggest concerns about retirement? Some people don't even know what their concerns are, and that's kind of our job is one, address your concerns, but also address concerns you don't even know that you have. Common fears are running out of money. So I've talked about this before. The number one fear of all Americans, all people in the world, is public speaking. They would rather die than speak in public. Number two is running out of money in retirement. Another common fear is market crashes. You know, if you were around for 2008, you saw 40% of your wealth dissipate. If you were around in the dot-com bubble, you saw a quarter of your wealth dissipate overnight. And somewhere around COVID, about the same thing happened. Tax increases. So if you didn't know, we are probably in the cheapest tax bracket that you're ever going to see in your lifetime. That's if, of course, you know, this administration doesn't do away with taxes, but you never hope that one administration will change your entire life. Today's goal is just give you clarity and solutions. This is definitely not a sales pitch.
And to chime in a little bit too on the running out of money, one of the biggest things that cause people to run out of money is because of market crashes. A lot of people don't realize that the market has huge ups and downs and huge swings. A lot of the people we chat with on a daily basis are telling me, man, the market's doing so well, the market's doing so well. And there's this classic term called buy low, sell high. Whenever the market is crushing it and we're seeing all-time highs and all kinds of growth, that is the time to cash in your chips and start setting some money aside that we want to protect and grow safely. Because as of today, it is the 25th. We've had 3 huge red days in the market right after hitting a new all-time high in the S&P. So it's just like we tell people, it's not operating based off of fear. It's operating based off of what's happened in the past because history repeats itself. And you guys probably know a lovely man by the name of Winston Churchill. He has a saying that those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And that is exactly what happens in your finances. Because if you don't heed all the warnings that happen, every single market crash we happen, and you start seeing a lot of those things line up again, and you still don't do anything to protect the income, that's when people really either have to work 5 to 7 years more than they're expecting. They have to take a significant lifestyle decrease, which is not good, or they have to do a lot of things that they aren't comfortable with that they didn't think they were going to do in retirement.
Yeah, and a quick side note, as of February, Berkshire Hathaway released all of their S&P 500 stocks. So not to
Wow.
fearmonger, but that's a big red flag.
When it comes to myths in the financial industry, there's some big ones that we see, and a lot of what happens in the market, whether it's Ken Fisher, Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, people like this, they do what's called financial marketing. They're not doing financial education. They are trying to bias your thinking in a specific way based on fear, which is not ever a good place to make decisions from. What we found is the best clients make decisions when they're educated and they know the pros and cons of different routes and they see clearly how the benefits can align for them because there's no free lunch. You always want to make sure you're doing your due diligence on both sides. But one of the biggest myths that we see is the whole stock market average rate of return. People are like, hey, my portfolio is averaging 10%. I did 17% last year. I did 20% the year before. The funny example to give you guys an illustration of why this is so terrible to use is let's write this down. If you guys have a piece of paper, take out a Post-it note, take out a pen. I'll give you a second. While you're grabbing that, I want you to write down $100 on that paper. Right next to it, I want you to write down negative 50%. So let's say that you have $100 and the market goes down 50% in 1 year, which has happened a few times. It's not likely to repeat itself, but just for an illustration. Now, after we have that $100 minus 50%, now we have $50 the next year in this example. Now I want you to write down 100% rate of return that next year off of the $50. Now what do we have in the account if you had that as your example of an account? $100 goes down to 50. Now you double 50, you're back at 100. Let's do the math. If we do the average rate of return off of that, we would have a 50% rate of return divided by 2 years. So 100% minus 50 divided by 2 years. That is a 25% average rate of return. Why do you still have $100 in your account? The reason that is because average and actual rates of return fluctuate by about 25 to 30% difference. So what happens when the stock market goes down, it throws off average rates of return completely to where you need to gain about 25 to 30% more on average when you gain back your money in the market. So a lot of times people think they're making money in the market, but they're really just catching up for losses that they've had in the past, and they're not even aware of it because all they're looking at is an average rate of return on the portfolio, which is the biggest lie the financial industry has ever created in terms of rate of return. All we need to look at is we need to look at actual rates of return, especially as we're getting close to retirement, because the average rate of return is one thing Dave Ramsey talks about a lot. He says, you're going to average 12%. And if you average 12%, we should be able to take out 8% income on average in the S&P, which is a complete lie. Every single financial study that's been run on that shows that you run out of money in about 5 years if you do that. That's the reason you need to be careful who you listen to when it comes to this industry, because they are not using educated data to help make you decisions. So that's why we talk so much about average and actual rates of return. That's a big lie. We need to care more about the actual rate of return, net of fees in our portfolio. And also, too, we need to make sure that we're accounting for market losses because, like we said, I don't care if the market did 30% this last year. if we just had a negative 20% downturn the year before, all we're doing in that point is we're making back the money that we lost the year before, and people are all happy about it. So that's one of the things that I would caution you against is don't get so caught up in the average and rate of return and the numbers in your portfolio. You need to start looking at how can I maximize the most amount of income down the line of retirement, and ask your financial advisor if you have one, say, hey, how much retirement income am I on track for based on the strategies that I'm doing? Don't ask about the rate of return.
Let me just tell you how far I've come. So back in 2016, I had a Robinhood account, and I think I had like $1,000 of Ford stock, and I would get a little ding on my phone every night, positive 5%, in the morning, negative 5%, and then the next day, positive 5, and the next day, I was like, over a month, I was like, sweet, I've just broken even. And I looked at my account and I had like $800 in there, and I was like, I was plus 5, minus 5, plus 5, minus 5. I should have zero. And it really smacked me in the face, and I was like, duh. And yeah, that's a little quick side note. So on the lower tax brackets, this is a huge myth. A lot of financial advisors will say you'll be in a lower tax bracket when you retire, so don't worry about taxes. Whenever I hear that, I think, so you're going to do such a bad job that you're going to reduce my income in retirement. If you start at a good enough time and you put enough money away, you should be in the same tax bracket, maybe even a higher tax bracket. Now, if you do the correct type of planning, you can be in a 0% tax bracket, but that's not what they're talking about. When it comes to lower tax brackets, they're saying, hey, you're in a 32% bracket now, but based on your retirement portfolio, but they won't tell you this, just like Fisher had talked about. If they do give you a retirement income number, most of the time it's a very ballpark number, around 4%, and you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. To me, I think that's hilarious, for one, because they're just not managing your money correctly. But two, future tax rate increases. So if you watched any of the news, there's rumors with HR 25 kind of getting rid of the federal income tax. I hope it happens, but I never put my chips in anything. I never hope that anything will happen. I just know what I know. And former Comptroller General David Walker said that in order for Social Security and Medicare to stay solvent, taxes have to double by 2035. So if you're in the 22% tax bracket today and you're retiring in 10 years, you might be in the 44% tax bracket. So being in a lower tax bracket is laughable. Knowing future tax brackets is huge. So if you didn't know, in 1950, the highest tax bracket was 91%. The president said that he does not work after May because every dollar he made, he would net 9 cents. If he's in the 91% tax bracket, makes that much money, Ronald Reagan, he's only going to net 9 cents per dollar. So he retired the second half of the year. In the 70s, the highest tax bracket was in the 70%. So whenever we see a 37% tax bracket is our highest bracket, and we say, oh, it'll never get that high, it was before. And if you're in California, and you're paying that ridiculous state tax, property taxes, you're probably all in around 55% if you're in the highest tax bracket. Another thing is national debt. Our national debt has basically doubled every 10 years for the last 30 years. And we have to pay that down in some way, shape, or form. Now, with this new administration, they're looking at paying about $1 trillion a year down just with some savings that we have found. But with national debt going up, we have to pay the debt down. We are making as much in interest as we are paying in interest. So in other words, it's a break even right now. We're paying $4 trillion of interest per year just to keep the debt where it's at about 35, $36 trillion. So
Wow.
taxes have to go up to keep Social Security and Medicare solvent, and taxes have to go up to pay down the debt. Simple enough.
And one more thing to elaborate on what Justin said too. Let's just say, for theory's sake, let's say taxes do get lowered and the tax cuts do get extended for another 4 years or so. If that does happen, this balloon effect is going to be even bigger because the taxes aren't getting paid down as much because we're having less taxable income because we're keeping the rates down for another 4 to 8 years or so. So that's one thing to consider, is you want to make sure that you're taking the government out of your retirement. And if they do double taxes in the future, if you have tax-free retirement, 2 times 0 is still 0. So it doesn't matter. One of the last myths that we see a lot of times is all financial advisors are fiduciaries and they're working for you. Sadly, what I've seen time and time again is most financial advisors are trained in a very specific way of thinking. It's not like they are trying to harm you, but they can only do as much as they can based on their training and things available to them. When it comes to retirement planning, most financial advisors, their whole goal is to build up a big old book of business and charge fees on it, which there's nothing wrong with the fee if you're getting some value for it. When we have managed accounts that we work on, we're usually trying to get you very similar rates of return on the upside, but we're getting you about half the risk of the S&P. So whenever the S&P drops 40%, you might only drop 20. That's a huge advantage because if you're paying a fee, but you're losing way less on the downside, you're going to make way more money in the long run because you'd spend more time making money instead of losing it. But what happens with a lot of advisors from what we've seen is they show you specific retirement income strategies of taking so little out of your account because keep in mind, they're getting a fee off of that account for the rest of life. What their goal is to show you how to maintain that principal or that same dollar figure. Let's say you retire at 65 with $1 million. They want you to keep that $1 million in there for the rest of your life till you pass away because they're making that 2% fee off that million for the rest of your life. So even if there was a way to get more income and spend the wealth that you've created and make sure you have an effective retirement income that you can do all the things that you wanted and work so hard for, they aren't going to show it to you because it works directly against their income. That's a really hard thing we've seen. So not trying to bash on financial advisors because we have a bunch at our firm too, but we want to make sure we're taking a comprehensive approach because if we're only relying on financial market-based assets to create income in retirement, that's what you're going to be stuck with. Is you're going to be stuck with 4% income. Your advisor is going to tell you, no, you can't take out more. Or if you do take out more, the risk of you running out of money increases substantially. So that's one big myth is your advisor might not be having your best interest at mind. The analogy that I'll give you quickly here is I don't know how long Mount Everest has been a hiking endeavor, but let's say you go to Mount Everest and you want to do a trek to the top of it. You hire what's called a Sherpa, which is like some local who knows the terrain and is well versed in all the strategies to get you to the top. But let me give you this analogy. Let's say you get to the top of Mount Everest, you pay this dude, and now you're like, man, that was great. We took all of our pictures. Now we want to get down. Imagine you turn around and you're about to hike back down the mountain, and the Sherpa who is supposed to guide you and protect you is nowhere to be found. That is literally what we see a lot of financial advisors do because they will get you to that big retirement number and show you how to accumulate tons of wealth. They will not really ever show you how to spend it. So people are so scared to spend the wealth that they've created and they end up not having a very fun retirement and a very stressful retirement because they're so worried about should I spend this? It's in the market. Is this the right choice? Because the advisors aren't helping them do that effectively. That's what
Yeah.
we've seen a lot.
That gets me hot, but I'm gonna go ahead and skip ahead on that one. Three phases of retirement. So that you have the accumulation, protection, and distribution. The accumulation is going to be your earning years, most of your earning years. So I like to say this is about 18 years old to 50. That is when you can take the risk. That is whenever you can grow the most amount of retirement income. You can shoot for those double-digit returns. But in the protection phase, you want to protect what you have. You want to make sure that, we always ask clients, how much money are you okay with losing? And they're always like, none. Okay, then why is all your money still in securities? Oh, I want a 20% rate of return. Well, what if 2008 happens? So in the protection phase, you need to reallocate some of your funds that you've already grown in protection. And then in the distribution phase, that's going to be when you actually distribute the income, when you start to take income. So on the accumulation side, you want risk management. You want the higher risk in your early 20s, 30s, such like that. The IUL is a good strategy because it is an indexed life insurance product. So it will mirror the S&P 500. It will mirror the stock market, get tax-free accumulation. And then the Roth IRA can be a substitute for the IUL, but if you're a higher income earner, you cannot access the Roth IRA. So you might have access to a Roth 401k within your company, but a Roth IRA, you are priced out. I think right now, as of this recording, it's like $250,000 as a couple. If you make that or above, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA. And it's like 170. Don't quote me on that for a single person. The Roth 401k is huge. If you have access to the Roth 401k, we talked about taxes being the lowest you'll probably ever see. If you have a Roth 401k with a Roth match. So before the Build Back Better Act, your Roth 401k could be pre-tax. The match could be. So if you put in $500 a month into your Roth, they would match it at 500 in your pre-tax account. Well, now since the Build Back Better Act, they can give you a Roth or post-tax match. So that is a huge advantage. If you have access to that, I can't give you advice, but that would probably be pretty profitable for you. On the protection side, once you get to your 50s, 60s, and you want to protect some of your retirement savings that you've accumulated, FIAs, income annuities are huge because you can take half, a significant portion of what you've saved and be like, hey, I want to protect it. I want to get a decent rate of return above inflation. And I want to make sure that at least if everything goes downhill, I will have that income annuity or that FIA to give me income for the rest of my life. And then for life insurance, you can use it for, a catch up. So let's say you get to you're 50 years old and you find out that, with what you have saved up, you can only take $40,000 a year of income and you're looking more for $60,000 a year. So you can actually overfund cash value life insurance and you can hyperfund it, meaning you can put more than the 7,500 or the 8,500 Roth IRA limitation and get that balance that you want to get that retirement income that you want. So in the protection phase, FIAs and life insurance are huge. And in the distribution phase, this is where we talk a lot about, the Fisher investments, the Dave Ramsey's that say annuities, are a scam because you can earn 12% in whatever fund that he, his unicorn fund, and still grow by 4% after you take 8%. Like that doesn't exist. I hate to say it. But with guaranteed annuities, you could see 7, 8, we've seen upward of 10% income off of money you've already accumulated. And then with the life insurance, you can use that as a pension, a tax-free pension income. And whenever you die, you leave a legacy behind. You could have a 6-figure life insurance policy left to your family.
The one thing I'll add too, with all three of these phases, there's only one product that helps you during all three phases, funny enough. And that's why we talk so much about it. It's different types of life insurance. Whether you're in the accumulation phase, trying to accumulate tax-free wealth, trying to get ahead for your savings, whether you're trying to protect your wealth and make sure that you don't lose all the hard-earned money that you've gained for the money you want in the future, or even in the distribution phase, there's ways that you can use life insurance to give you significantly more income because of the death benefit that you have there or the tax-free assets. So life insurance is one of those things where people think that it's only for when you're about to die. Life insurance is probably one of the most foundational financial tools because it's going to increase your rate of return, your income, and your protection at every single stage of your financial journey, not just when you're in your 70s and 80s thinking about how much coverage do I need for a burial.
Yep. And then one thing we always say in our coaching group, because we have a coaching group for agents and advisors, and one thing we say to clients is, yes, we have the information, you understand it, we put it out in a way that you can understand it, but do not just take our word. If we give you information, go dig, because what most people will say, my word is the word. I am financial Jesus. You just take everything that I say as facts, and that's not what we're saying.
One of the biggest things we talked about when it comes to the concerns people have for their retirement is they're concerned about running out of money. But one of the biggest reasons that actually happens that people aren't aware of, because we've had such a crazy bull market ever since 2008 and the bottom of that recession, is market losses are the biggest thing that impact your retirement. What do I mean by this? Let's give you an example of, let's say someone is 65, they just turned 66, they're about to retire, and they have $500,000 in their portfolio. So we'll look at Jane on the left and Jim on the right. Let's just look at Jane for an example. Let's say she's taking out 4%, which is what's called the safe withdrawal rate from her retirement account every single year, and this is adjusted for inflation every year. So if you see the distributions going up, that is why. What happens the first year is she's retiring. Basically, this looks like it was 2000. So she retires in 2000, which was a tech bubble, and we got a negative 10%, negative 13%, negative 23% rate of return the first 3 years retirement. So she's taking a 4% distribution and her annual withdrawals are about 20,000, but her account value almost drops by about 50% the first 3 years. I don't know about you, but if I was retiring and I saw my account get cut in half the first 3 years of retirement, I'd be pretty scared. But what does your financial advisor always tell you? When the market goes down, you don't have to worry because what's it going to do? It's going to rebound, right? Which it does. So let's keep playing this down. Let's say now we have a 26% rate of return. The market's starting to recover. And finally, right when she's hitting 73, we've gotten a little bit more in our portfolio and we've gained about, let's call it $30,000 over the last 5 years. But now we have the housing crisis. We have the real estate crash, the market goes down 40%. So she's still taking her 4%, but now her account goes down 100,000 that year, plus to what she took out. So she loses about 125,000, which is horrifying. If you were to look at this example right now and not account for any market growth moving forward, if let's just say the market was flat and did nothing at this point from 74 till this person passed away, they would only have about 7 years of retirement income left before they were dead broke and were out of money. That's what's really scary about people saying that there's an average rate of return of 7% in the market, which is exactly what's illustrated here. But you can have two drastically different outcomes. And if we keep going down this chart, yeah, we had 08, 09, the market did well. 2010, it started to recover, and we started to see some good rates of return. But she's 81, and now we've depleted our $500,000 account to 74,000. So again, if there was a sideways market and we didn't have much growth for the next 3 years, she's out of money. How would it feel if you worked 30, 40 years of your life, you accumulated a nest egg, worked so hard for this, and you say, man, I can't wait to retire, live my life. And every single year that you're taking a distribution, you're wondering how many more years can I do this before I'm out of money? That's a horrible retirement to have. And that's simply because that is the way that the system has trained us to think is keep your money in the market. It's always going to come back. But the things that help you accumulate money while you're accumulating money in your market-based accounts, they directly work against you in retirement. So the market going up and down can be helpful when you're accumulating your wealth because you can buy low, sell high, like we said. But all of that happening in retirement and the fluctuations of volatility, that can negatively impact your retirement just as bad as it helped you while you're saving. So at the end of this journey, she's 81, and that's not even average life expectancy. Females now are living a lot longer. Males are living a lot longer with health and medical advances, but she only has a few more years of income here, which is scary. Let's look at the right-hand side. All that we're doing here is we're taking the same years, but we're reversing the order of sequence. So this is still from 2000 to, I believe, 2020 something. But now we're starting with some good years first. Because remember, we've had some really great years over the market the last couple of years. Look at how drastically the income stays the same, but look at how drastically the account value changes. Now, a couple years in, at 72, she has 871,000, which is a $500,000 difference roughly, and she's not even halfway through retirement. So we are gaining tons and tons of money. And then we have a 2008 event where it goes down 40%. Oh,
Wow. That wasn't supposed to happen.
that's
Let's get
okay.
that going.
So we had all that money. We're at 871. We have a negative 40% correction. Now we're at 500,000. But if you scroll down all the way to that bottom right, the only difference between these two is the order of the returns. These both have about an average of 7% rate of return. So if average is what matters, then why is there such a big difference between having 74,000 and having 344,000? That's about $250,000 difference with the same average rate of return. So when you're talking to your financial advisor, one of the biggest questions I want you to ask is what plan does he have in place for you to make sure that you aren't going to run out of money in retirement because market losses and this happening a couple down years right before retirement or right at the beginning of retirement can cripple your income and your retirement just because we weren't protecting ourselves. This is a completely unnecessary risk people take on, but it's simply because they aren't aware that the impact of a couple down years in the first 5 years before retirement or first 5 years after retirement has. So please, please, please know that this is unnecessary. You don't have to worry about running out of money. There's a better way. And the question that I always tell clients or I always ask clients is how would it feel knowing that you can retire when you want, not when the market says you can, and knowing that you're never going to run out of money and you're never going to have to stress of who's dropping bombs on who today, who's present. You're never going to have to worry about a thing or if your money is going to be there or not. All you have to do is worry about spending the money that you've worked so hard and live the life that you wanted, do the vacations, do the things with the kids. That's all you had to do. So that's an example of why we're so passionate about this is because two people can have the same amount of money, but two drastically different outcomes.
So the 4% withdrawal rate, we call that the Trinity study back in the 1990s that David had talked about. Why is it dead? The problem is the longevity risk and the market downturns. We talked about that. If you take the 4% and you have this sequence of return risk that we just talked about, and the market downturns, you could run out of money within, the average retiree that emotionally sells. We'll run out of money in about 11 to 14 years. I know that's kind of a spread, but imagine you retire at 65 and you don't even make it to 80 before you run out of money. The solution for that is really FIAs for guaranteed income, so fixed indexed annuities and income annuities. What it does is it protects your accounts that you've grown already, puts them somewhere that is harbored from losses. There are no charges associated with these accounts unless you do liquidate them early, but they're retirement accounts. You're not going to do that. So imagine having an account for 10 years that has a floor of 0% and let's say a cap of 9%. So the S&P 500 goes up 10, you only got 9. But the S&P 500 goes down 20%, you get a 0. Meantime, there's no fees charged to the account, so you don't have to worry about, if we have a 0% year and my advisor took his 2% cut, his rake, I'm not losing to that. And then up to 8% distributions with this smart type of planning. And I'll kind of let David go over why 8% distributions versus 4% is even possible.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to touch on here is the 4% rule. Why that is a thing is because we have to hedge against three different risks or things in retirement. We have to account, number one, for market losses. Some years the market's good, some years it's bad. We can't take out so much on the good years that we don't have a budget for the down years. So that's number one. So if we don't have market losses on part of our portfolio, we can instantly increase the income simply because we're not going to have down years that we need to hedge against. Number two is like Dustin said, if we have fees on the account, average of 2%, I've seen some even go up to 3% with different companies. If we can minimize those fees by 1%, take it from 2 to 1, we can usually have about a 25% higher income just of that alone. And then lastly is if there's some different ways we can help people minimize taxes where they're paying taxes now at a historically low rate so they don't have to pay increasing taxes in the future. Because retirement, keep in mind, retirement is not you from 65 years old to 66 years old. A lot of people think, how can I maximize what I have right now? You need to be thinking of the next 25, 30 years because that's what retirement is. A lot of market changes can happen. A lot of tax changes can happen. And you need to think about how can you eliminate all of the risk that's going to happen over that 30-year journey and not be exposed to it. So those are the three things is simply from taking it from 4 to 8 is because we don't have as much market losses. We don't have as much fees. And if there's ways that we can help you eliminate tax on parts of the portfolio, all that money is yours and we don't have a hard time spending it because we know exactly what's in there is our money. We don't have to save up for the future tax rates in the future.
Yeah. A quick saying is whenever you put all your money into pre-tax accounts or what's called qualified accounts, you're basically going into a contract into business with the government. And you're saying, hey, I want to put money into this account today, not pay taxes on it, but in the future, I want to withdraw it. And you can tell me whatever rate that you want to take out of that, your cut, you just choose it. That's basically what you're doing because you don't know what future tax rates are going to be. They could be lower, they could be 5 times higher. We don't know.
Let's give you an example of what that looks like on paper now. So if you're like a lot of our clients, we go through information and they're like, hey, this is fantastic. I love it. Just kind of show me what this actually means for me. If you're a visual learner, that's how I am. Here's an example of if we go back to that example, just visually in your head. Remember we had $500,000. The lady was 55, just turned 66, wanted to take income now. This is an example of a type of FIA that gives you a guaranteed income for life, no matter what the market does. And based on her age, she's going to get 7.53%, which if we take it from 4 to 7.53% income, that's guaranteed. By the way, the 4% income is not guaranteed. If we have market losses, you could run out of money. You could have all these other things that happen. This is guaranteed for life. The crazy thing about this is she's going to have almost twice the income by just shifting part of her assets to something like this that's going to minimize the fees, minimize the market losses, and it's going to prevent her from running out of money. And the additional benefit that we didn't even cover is a lot of these different plans have something called an impairment multiplier. As you guys know, as you get older, what's going to happen eventually in your retirement is you're going to run into things like long-term care. You're going to get sick, you're going to get ill. The data just shows that at large, a big portion of the retirement population is going to have an event like that. And one thing we want to make sure of is that we're protecting against that. This allows people to have actually double the income guaranteed for a period of time to make sure that they're not going to have to liquidate all their other hard-earned assets, sell their house, downsize. They're going to be able to pay for those increases in healthcare costs like long-term care that Social Security and Medicare don't cover. So that's a huge benefit as well too, where people can have a higher income, they can be protected health-wise, where it's not just about is everything going to go perfect in retirement? You're protected against almost every single thing that can be thrown at your financial house. There's a fence built around that for you. And the biggest thing too with this, to give you a comparison, using the 4% rule, how big of a portfolio do you need to generate the same amount of income from those assets? Because no matter whether you have $10 million or $500,000, you should be thinking about how can I be most efficient with the assets I have? You never want to waste a single dollar. So even if you could afford to use the 4% rule and you say, hey, I have tons of money, that's still not an effective way. Because if we can take a smaller amount of money out of your portfolio, put it in something that gives you a guaranteed income for all the bills that you have, guess what? That leaves more money that we can put in the market to take all the risk you want with because we're not going to need the income. So either way you cut it, it's going to be hugely helpful. But to give you the exact number, using the 4% rule, this client would have had to have almost $1 million in their portfolio, which most of the people, when they come to us at retirement, they don't have as much as they thought. They thought they were going to have 2 million. They thought they were going to have 1 million. Life happens. It throws them some curveballs. Kids have sports, divorces happen, just life happens. And people constantly come to us saying, hey, how can we be most efficient with what I have? Because I thought I'd have more. And even if you do have more, we still need to be playing the same game to maximize the growth long term for those assets you're going to leave to your family.
Yeah, and just so you know, the average 401k at the age of 65, not to scare anyone, is about $215,000. Of course, that's putting into perspective that most people work fast food or, live off Social Security most of their life. So that's a zero. So zero brings down that average big time. But $215,000 kicks off about $10,000, maybe $800 a month of income. And a little bit of info, Roth conversions, you can convert some of your taxable accounts into tax-free with a one-time tax bill versus paying like a pension to the government. So let's say you have $1 million 401k and you want to lower your tax obligation to the least amount as possible. You can actually convert, once you get to 60 years old, a significant portion of that $1 million to tax-free. So let's say we do $100,000 a year for 5 years. Now the tax bill that you would have to pay, let's just say it's 28%. You can pay that out of your 100,000 that you roll over every year. So if you do a Roth conversion before the age of 60 or 59 and a half, you actually have to pay that tax out of your pocket. If you wait till you're 60 years old, you can pay it out of your balance. So now we can convert half of your portfolio to tax free, get the taxes over with now. And let's say that tax bill is, 30,000 by five, that's $150,000 versus if you kept that 500,000 in your portfolio, took the 4% income, lived 20 years, your tax bill over your lifetime could have been 400,000. So you could save a huge chunk of change by converting early.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about the power of life insurance and retirement planning. So if you're following me at all, I talk a lot about cash value life insurance, and we can talk about term insurance and other types of insurance. But mostly the reason why I talk about cash value life insurance, I have found it is the easiest way to get, for the lack of a better word, screwed over in retirement planning in any kind of cash accumulation. In any kind of planning, cash value life insurance is the easiest way for someone to get maximized commissions and to give you the least amount of tax-free growth. So that's the reason why I talk about it so much. I used to talk about financial planning, estate planning, tax strategies, foreign trusts, like everything you can think of. And I was like, I am so sick of seeing people getting screwed over day in and day out. And I could help so many more people by just talking about this. So I can say I'm kind of like I hate to even say an expert in the field, but you can use the IUL for tax-free income throughout retirement. It gives you a wealth transfer without probate or estate taxes. Now, whenever it comes to estate taxes, right now the limits are, I think it's about $13 million per person. So if you're a couple and you're worth $26 million, your entire estate will transfer tax free. But if you're worth $50 million, The other 24 million above the exemption is taxed at 40%. So if you die with $50 million with no kind of estate planning, you could have a $10 million tax bill that your kids have to pay in order to get that money. So that's one thing to think about. Most, I say most because most death benefits are tax free. The only way they're not tax free is if you create what's called a MEC, modified endowment contract. And this is if your agent or advisor just doesn't teach you about your policy. You know, hey, $500 a month I want to put away into this IUL, and they build it for only $500 a month. And one day you drop 20 grand into it. Well, now you just create a fat tax bill. And whenever you die, that death benefit is taxable. So just kind of give you all the information. And if you could create a tax-free income, wouldn't that be worth exploring? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm about as patriotic as it gets, but I'm not about giving Uncle Sam any of my money. So if I can retire and not pay a dime to the government and really not pay any kind of fees to any kind of advisor, I want to do that. And a lot of people will say, you know, now you're paying the greedy insurance companies. And I would say there's greed and there is profit to be made in any company. Any business is made for profit. Now it's made to fix a problem, but they also profit. So me personally, I would rather take a $1 billion insurance company that all they do is risk management, put my money there, knowing that that company is not going to go under and I will get that guaranteed income for life. Simply enough.
If you're one of those people too that has questions about life insurance, you've chatted with someone before, like Dustin said, where you're like, it just doesn't make sense. A lot of that is because these plans can be flexibly designed. Like he said, if you sit with the wrong agent who's not a professional and doesn't know how to do these things, they could be creating a huge commission for themselves at the expense of your income and growth. That's what he's kind of hinting at there. So what we do with a lot of people is we customize them to maximize cash value, minimize our commissions, which actually gives way more back to the client in terms of income, accumulation, all that. So I just want to touch on that quickly. And the last thing, if you have chatted about life insurance before, or you have health issues and you don't think you can get it covered, there's different ways that we can show you how to create tax-free streams of income from your current assets you have already without having to go the life insurance route. So just don't get discouraged if you're uninsurable or there's some health issues that you've had, because again, life does throw some curveballs. There are ways that we can create a tax-free pension for you by using different strategies as well.
Yep. And not only Roth conversions, but real quick, you can use cash value life insurance on family members. So, you know, if you're a husband and you have heart problems and you can't get covered, but your wife is perfectly healthy, you can have the policy on your wife and you can be the owner, the operator. You can take the income from that policy, no problem. Same thing, you know, if you have a brother or sister that's really healthy, but you and your wife are unhealthy, you could set up a family trust and have the family trust open the policy on your brother or sister. You can own it, you can operate it, you can use it for income. So there's most of the time there's a workaround for just about everything. And quick case study, how much assets would you need to generate 56 grand of post-tax income per year? So the answer real quick is 1.4 million in a Roth, that's using the 4% rule, and about 1.87 million in an IRA slash 401k. Don't know why it's a question mark. I think this software is just fried. We've already fixed that once already. So pre-tax 1.87 million, you take your 4%, pay the taxes. Now you would net $56,000 per year. The cool thing about cash value life insurance, you see this client's 45, putting in about $1,000 a month, which is above and beyond the Roth contribution limits. So right now I think it's 7,500 for someone younger than, you know, the catch up period. You can put in 7,500 per year. This person is putting in $1,000 per month. Well, by the time they turn 67, they contributed about $264,000 and their balance is roughly about 535. So a financial advisor looks at that and says, "Are you kidding me? Over 22 years, you only doubled your money once, maybe one and a half times." Yeah, I get it. But again, the income that you are getting off of this account is about 10%. Would you take a 10% income that is tax free, that's like a pension, over a 4% income that's not guaranteed, that's volatile in the market, sequence of return risk, all of that? I think I would rather take the safety approach.
And to summarize all the things that we've talked about, you should 100% have money in the market. You should 100% have money in life insurance. You should diversify across all these asset classes. Any one advisor who says you should do only life insurance or only market-based assets or any one thing, you should probably stay very clear of them. what we've seen from, again, studies that have been done time and time again, if you want to look this up, we'll post this in the follow-up email for you guys to look at this study a bit more. But there is a study by Ernst & Young that shows that if you have a balance of assets under management, market-based assets and equities, guaranteed annuities for income, and tax-free assets like life insurance, you combine all of those things together in retirement in different proportions based on your age and your risk, you can have 8% income in retirement instead of 4, which what I would encourage you to look at is, let's say you have, do the math right now. You say you have $2 million. That's going to generate you about $80,000 of assets in retirement of income. But if we could take that from 4 to 8% without any additional risk, without any extra money out of pocket, without working longer, without having to worry about running out of money in retirement, and all these other crazy benefits that come with it, that is an incredible deal. But the reason that people don't do this is because their financial advisor is not incentivized to do these things. When we talk about moving money into insurance and annuities from assets under management, that takes money out from under your financial advisor's fees. That is going to create an income for you, not an income for him. That's why whenever people meet with any of our licensed financial professionals, we take a comprehensive approach that says, hey, how much money do we need in the market for growth and maintain longevity? How much do we need in terms of guarantees of income to make sure no matter what happens, we can pay our bills and do the things we want? And how much assets do we want in a tax-free strategy like an IUL to make sure that we're hedging against tax risk down the line and creating a tax-free income? That's why we're so passionate about this, is because if you could double your income with very little risk and taking a lot of times it's less risk than you already have, that's going to be a pretty substantial impact to your retirement. And it's going to create a lot more certainty, knowing that you can retire again when you want, not when the market says you can.
Yep. I want to touch on a few things here because this kind of follows my marketing. On the AUM side, again, I talked about this before. Most companies are going off of fear-based clients. They want to create as many clients as possible based off of fear mongering. So again, I hate name dropping, but Fisher Investments is all about AUM. Ken Fisher said he would rather die and go to hell than to sell an annuity. The reason why is, let's say you have $1 million in management and you take half of that, throw it into an annuity. So he was making $20,000 a year in AUM fees. Now he's only making $10,000. That annuity, he probably would have made $30,000. That's 3 years. In 3 years, he would have made just as much money in that AUM. But since he did the annuity for a one-time commission, the rest of his pension that he was hoping to get from that other $500,000, he doesn't get anymore. So again, like we said earlier with the climbing Mount Everest, why would he want to take half of his income away to help you? That's honestly what they're doing. And then there are some, I could just call them agencies, life insurance companies, that all they sell are annuities. So if you're 20 years old and you have an old 401k what's worth $15,000, they're going to say put it into an annuity. And that is criminal, because if you're 20, you have 40 years to go gamble that money. And you could turn that into $500,000 if you got crazy with it. You throw it into an annuity, you'll be lucky if it turns into $50,000 by the time you're that age. So there's people that sell just AUM. There's people that just say put your money into an annuity. And the biggest farce that there is out there right now, there are tons of MLM IMOs that are teaching their life insurance agents to only sell IULs. Hey, stop contributing to your 401k that has a 10% match. Put it into the IUL. We'll put it into this made up index that makes you crazy rates of return that doesn't exist. There's just people out there that will just literally fearmonger, get you into one position only, and they're going to say it's the best for you. They don't take a full approach. We take the full approach. So with that, we'll just say that if you want a free retirement audit, if anything here struck a nerve, if there was something that you saw that you're like, wow, I never heard of that, didn't know that existed. Why didn't my advisor talk about this? If you want to keep your advisor and you just want a second opinion, we're all about that. We honestly don't want to handle everything that you have. It's just a bunch of risk. If I take over all of your portfolio, I have all the risk. But if all you need from me is just a life insurance policy because your Primerica agent won't sell you an IUL, we'll do that. So what we review, again, we talk about risk exposure, sequence of return risk, things like that, tax strategies, how can we get to you to not paying any kind of taxes in income, guaranteed income plan. We talked about the FIA and income annuities. Also with cash value life insurance, you can get a pension, a tax-free pension. There's no obligation. We just want to make sure you have clarity on your plan. One thing I always try to do is I give you clarity on the plan that you have. This is where you're headed. This is the outlook of where you are headed based on what you have and what you're contributing. If we were to reallocate your funds, put them somewhere where you could probably get a better, maybe rate of return or just better retirement income, here's that path. Which one do you like better? I'm not going to tell you, hey, our path is better, that you should do this for this reason. We just basically say, here's where you're headed. Here's where you can go. Which one would you like? And just so you know, after this call, we'll have a follow-up email sent to you. We said that Ernst & Young report, we'll send that to you. I'll send you a link so you can book an appointment with us if you want to. It's totally free. Again, we just want to clarify and make sure that you're on the right route. And again, if you want to go to my Viking Financial Group bio on Instagram, that's where most of my followers are. So I just kind of funnel everyone there. My link is there if you want to get there quicker. I don't know if you have anything else you want to follow up on, Fisher. I know that I have a lot to say about a lot of things, but we'd be here for about 2 or 3 hours if I just popped my top.
No, I think that's perfect. Again, just in light of where the economy is right now, and there's a lot of uncertainty, never hurts to just make sure that you are having some certainty around your options and your certainty around your income and making sure that you're not exposed to unnecessary risk. Because all these things we talked about, tax, market loss, longevity risk, running out of money, all of that is completely unnecessary if you have the proper plan.
Completely avoidable. All right. Appreciate it, guys.